Good evening.
Good evening.
You made it.
Yeah, this is a cute little studio you got here.
It's not mine. It's Austin Public Access
Oh,
studio.
you're using it.
Man, it's good to meet you, man. But I think we first met. I was working with Gabe's campaign,
Yeah.
and I think Mike Hockett introduced us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's still around.
Yeah, and I still I read your bio. Man, you did a lot of stuff, man.
I'm old.
You've been a lot of places.
Well, if you have enough time, you can do a lot of things, you know.
Don't say you're old, man.
Well,
Dave,
relatively.
here's how I look at it, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
A 16-year-old and we're on the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
He has today and I have today. All this other stuff is just a number.
Okay.
It's just a number.
It's a good attitude.
I was very interested in your background because I was saying before you arrived, it's similar to mine. I was an English major in college.
No.
I don't know if you heard of my college, Denison University in Granville, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Small, private, liberal arts college.
I
You
went
went
to
to
Franklin Marshall, which is
Franklin Marshall.
It's right next. Well, you know, in
Is that in West
Pennsylvania.
Virginia?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah. And it's a small liberal arts college too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I looked at your bio and you said you majored in history and English,
Mm-hmm.
I had an English major, but I had a lot of hours in sociology and economics.
Yeah.
Because at a small liberal arts college, you could kind of do that.
You can sort of make your own schedule to some degree.
Because you really didn't have, at least where I was, I didn't really have anything else to do. You know, school's on a big old hill and you're trapped.
Yeah.
So you may as well just hit the books. That's all you can do.
Yeah, or have a lot of parties.
But I must confess, I was a bit jealous when I read your bio.
Why?
Because you said you're a journalist.
I was. Yeah,
That-
well,
that
I
was-
have been, yeah.
That was something that I thought about when I was getting out of college.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to write for the college newspaper. I was the first
So did I.
black student probably to have a column in the newspaper there. I used to write for the newspaper, and that kind of interested me. I was looking at
Yeah.
Columbia School of Journalism or something like that because
That's
I had-
great. That's a great journalism school.
I had a professor, Dr. Garrett, who was the first African American to get a PhD in foreign languages from Columbia.
It's interesting.
She was an amazing woman
Yeah.
and a tough professor. Mean, that's the toughest they ever got was from her. Had to earn it.
Well.
Had to give blood.
That's the way it should be. They should just give them away free.
To me, at liberal arts college, it was kind of it's kind of strange and crazy in a way, because, at least for me, I used to decide how hard I want to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't really too hard to get a C if you can live with a C.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a B, you had to do a certain amount of work you had to do. If you want an A, you had to give, I used to say you had to give blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it should be, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know when I was in college, they were talking about inflation, grade inflation.
Mm-hmm.
The president thought the school average should be like a 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he thought.
Nobody be very happy with that.
No.
Yeah.
And so if the president sets that kind of bar, that makes it hard on the students.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was going to college, I was very jealous of friends of mine who got into colleges like Harvard, where there was grade inflation already in place.
Yeah.
And they were doing the same amount of work that I was. I was getting, a B, and they were getting A's. Just because once you get into someplace like Harvard, they automatically assume that you're going to do first-class work.
Yes.
So you don't really have to do the work because they're going to get an A anyway, unless you do really badly.
I had a buddy that went to Brown, and I found out
Mm-hmm.
many of those Ivy League schools, if you were not going to get an A or B, they would encourage you to drop the class.
Yeah.
And so you would have a high GPA coming out, but it's not like you slave. To me, college was a slave to me.
Of course, once you figure things out, you can figure that out for yourself. You should drop a class you're not doing well in. I didn't know about dropping classes when I was in college. I just thought, once you're in them, and you had to tough it out.
One thing I never dropped a class. I was there on scholarship, and the deal was you get good grades and we pay.
Yeah.
And I like that. I had that deal in law school and college. I never paid tuition, thank God.
That's nice.
I couldn't have if I wanted to. I couldn't have afforded SMU with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm. You went to SMU for law school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That's what they tell me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
It's
in
got a nice
Ohio.
campus.
I was just kind of in the private white college pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, that's not so bad.
no, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty cool. When I first got to college, I found out how the other half lived.
Mm.
When I first got to Denison, we used to have people come in and change our linens 2 days a week and
Nice.
empty our garbage.
That's nice.
Yeah. And had steak and shrimp every Saturday.
Hmm.
I mean, that was cool with me.
That sounds like a good deal.
And then we had some black people say, these white folks, man, what you talking about? Man, this is cool here,
Mhm.
as far as I was concerned. But getting down to what I really like to discuss is politics.
Yeah.
And I think I've jousted with you a couple of times on Facebook. I think I had difference of opinion with you on some things. But I don't know anything, and maybe my audience may know even more than me about it, about libertarians.
Hmm.
Because I understand you're a libertarian. I only know one. That's Mike Cargill, I believe.
And he's a libertarian too, but he's a Republican like I am.
Yes.
Yeah, we're both in the same boat. We want the government to leave us alone, but unfortunately, you can't get that done without working within a political party. You got to have some influence. You got to have some pull to get the government to do something, which means you have to, go along with some of the things the government wants you to do in order to get them to reform the way they do certain things. I think everybody is, to some degree, a little bit of a libertarian. The question is how much you're willing to put up with, how much liberty you're willing to give up in order to get the things that government can do for you. I think the Republican Party traditionally has been a pretty libertarian party because it wants to get government off your back. But more recently, it's been doing a pretty bad job of that. The government, the state of Texas government with Abbott in charge and previous governor with Rick Perry, they haven't done much to limit the growth of government. Perry spent an awful lot of time helping out companies to run toll roads and stuff, which ends up costing consumers way more than if the government was running them. I don't like the idea of government running roads, but it does it more efficiently. It's one of the few things the government does efficiently.
What would be the libertarian view on marijuana use, say, for example? Because I don't know.
Yeah, it's a natural herb that grows out there that it doesn't do that much damage, and why shouldn't people be able to use it?
Well, I always thought the libertarian view was, hey, whatever you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody as long as you don't harm anyone else, have at it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the libertarian position on most things. If it's a victimless crime, or if it only affects you, then you should be able to do it. Now, marijuana, you got some gray areas. Things like driving under the influence. That's something you shouldn't be able to do. With alcohol or marijuana, anything else you take, you should still be a responsible driver. So if you're caught driving while under the influence of it, you should be, punished appropriately.
Because you could injure yourself or others. That's the thing.
Yeah.
My thing is, as long as what you're doing, as long as you don't bother me, hey, knock yourself out.
Right. That's libertarian right there.
I didn't know.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize that they are sort of libertarian. We just sort of assume the American way of doing things, ideally, is to keep government out of our private business, and most of us assume that's what we believe in. Don't really think about what philosophy it lines up with very much. It's just the way we like things. And you probably don't want government coming and telling you what to do. And Michael Cargill doesn't want government telling him they can and can't own guns, for example. Right. That's a big issue now. Government's trying to get into the gun business pretty heavily, and Abbott isn't doing anything to stop it here in Texas. He had a big conference where he got everybody together to talk about ways they're going to limit gun rights. That's guns inherently, even more than marijuana or anything like that. A gun doesn't do any harm if it's just sitting there in your house.
I'm going to have a guest on in the not too distant future on that very thing. I'm going to ask her to bring your guns and sit them right here on the table during the whole show, and see if they move, see if they jump up and shoot us. Because
they probably won't.
I can almost guarantee they won't.
But some people think that they might. It seems that way anyway.
Yeah, I hear some people act like guns have legs and fingers.
Yeah.
Guns don't shoot themselves. People shoot guns.
Yeah. Like, people can be irresponsible with their use of guns, but people can be irresponsible with the use of a car and kill a hell of a lot more people than with a gun.
People can be irresponsible with the use of anything, actually. Yeah. I learned a few weeks ago, I have an older brother. My brother is 81.
Oh, he's a lot older. Than
And yeah, he's got 14 years on me.
Yeah.
And he told me he smoked cigarettes. He's the only smoker in the family. He's been smoking. He was sneaking smoking when he was 10. He talked to my grandfather when my grandfather, the man who was my grandfather at the time, told him, if you're gonna do that, stop sneaking.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, don't smoke cigarette with filters, and don't smoke menthol.
Yeah.
And he's been smoking since at least 60 or 70 years.
And he hasn't died.
60 years, at least 60 or
Yeah.
70 years.
Yeah. My grandfather smoked until he was 97.
This is the one who, now my brother had an aortic aneurysm
Mm-hmm.
and had 8% chance of dying. He went in the hospital. He made it to the hospital. They did like 8 to 10 hours of surgery on him. And 3 days later, he signed himself out of the hospital. They gave him a walker. He says the walker's in his apartment in the corner gathering dust. He said, I'm not using that.
That's good.
He says, I'm fighting back.
Yeah.
But I know my mom lived to be, you were in his CD intro, you've seen a picture of my mom. My mom lived to be 102.
That's good.
Her
That's
mom
awesome.
lived to be 114, so
Jesus. That's incredible.
I got some miles to go as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
Well, you don't look your age. You're well preserved.
That makes it sound like I'm a fossil or something.
No.
Well preserved. Someone
That's
said that
what
to
people
me.
say.
You well preserved. That reminds me of things. You pouring ointment on something to make something
Or you might have been
nasty.
pickled, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
You were born in Beirut?
I was. Yeah, my dad was in the Foreign Service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we were stationed in Damascus, Syria. But the only decent hospital in the area was in Beirut, so they sent my mom to Beirut for a couple of months for vacation. And back then, Beirut was like the Riviera. They had all these great hotels and beaches. And my mom just stayed on the beach for 2 months and then went to the hospital. And I was born in the American hospital in Beirut. And her vacation was over. She had to take care of me then.
That sounds sort of like the Caribbean. I lived in St. Thomas for 4 years and St. Croix for 4 years, which was great.
Yeah.
But 5 hurricanes can make it not so great.
Yeah.
It makes you want to get out of town.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to getting.
Yeah.
But it was cool when I was there. But you write mostly. The other thing I saw in your background was you design fonts. What's that? What's that?
Well, typefaces. When you use a computer, you got all these typefaces you can choose from for the text to be in, and I designed those.
How'd you get into that from English and history?
Really weird. I always liked doing lettering and stuff, like calligraphy, but when I guess in sophomore year in college, I took a semester off and did an apprenticeship with my cousin Phil. And he was a printer, and he got me classes in typography and in layout and design, all sorts of printing skills. And as a result, I learned about how fonts were done. Now, back in those days, it was done with the first laser printers, which were these giant machines, and you had discs with the fonts on them, and you had to take the discs out and put them in, depending on what you wanted to change. And it was all written in a computer code called LaTeX. Which was a markup language. So I learned to do all that stuff, which was all skills that are completely useless now. Totally obsolete. They were obsolete within 5 years. But you learn something about the background of how all this stuff worked. So all along, while I was going to college, and then grad school, studying history and English, I did some stuff on the side, publishing companies, doing work for them, designing book covers and stuff like that. And eventually, I began to develop that into a business. And I guess about 2005, it was successful enough that I could stop teaching college, which I was doing then, and do that full time. And I've got a bunch of great clients like Disney and Pixar, Tim Burton Productions, a lot of movie companies use my fonts. There's a movie coming out in March called Onward, which has my fonts in it. No, that's the cool aspect of it. But really, it's mostly just practical type stuff.
You know, the guy who was probably CEO of Disney, Mike Eisner.
Yeah.
He happened to go to the college I went to.
Really?
I wasn't there when he was there. He was there before I was there,
Right.
but it's the same
That's interesting.
small world.
Yeah, it's a small
world.
Very, for a small college to produce, somebody prominent like that.
Yeah,
is unusual.
Mike Eisner, Hal Holbrook. There was somebody used to.
Hmm.
They used to drive in the Bobby Ray Hall or somebody. They
Mhm.
drove in the Indianapolis 500. They went
Interesting.
there too.
Yeah. With Franklin Marshall, where I went, we had some notable actors who went there. Treat Williams and Roy Scheider, both
Oh,
with
yeah.
Franklin Marshall. Yeah, they're sort of cool actors.
Yeah, I liked this movie, All That Jazz.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of scary and depressing, but a lot of drug use. And,
Yeah, a lot of fun.
yeah.
He partied all the way out
Yeah.
in that movie.
Mhm. Well, I forget. He was playing. Oh man, my mind goes. The guy from the Broadway
It's like,
choreographer.
it's like they having you call them senior moments.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm senior enough for them.
Yeah, well, be glad you have them. You know,
Yeah.
some people pushing up daisies, they don't get to have those.
Well, it's better to have them than not have any at all.
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
Yeah.
That sounds like a joke I heard on Hee Haw one time. He used to like to watch Hee Haw. Junior said he first started dating someone. He said the girl told me I had bad breath. He said I told her I'd rather have bad breath than no breath at all.
Yeah.
I said okay, good enough. But in politics,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm one of the few people that I know of. When Donald Trump was coming down the escalator, I bet somebody $100 he would win,
Yeah.
and they still haven't paid me.
That's
They
not
won't
right.
pay me.
They should pay you.
They said they'll pay me for anything, but not that.
That seems sort of sour grapes.
But I knew I just had a feeling. Had a feeling.
He has a way with media and appearances, making things look the way they should. Very effective. But it's because he's learned from the best people. You know, he studied. When he was coming up, he was studying people like Hitler. Now Hitler isn't a good person, but he knew how to make an impact.
Yeah.
And Trump picked up on those ideas. He makes good, very effective speeches. If you take his speeches and you watch them, the crowds love what he's saying.
Yeah.
If you look at them written down, they don't make any sense at all. But they're very effective. They stir people up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, you talk about Reagan being the great communicator, and he was very good at presenting ideas. But Trump is very good at communicating emotions.
Yeah.
And that's important too in politics.
I think in many instances, people do what they feel, not what they think,
Oh yeah, that's certainly true.
and that's what I believe. That's what Obama tapped into.
Mm-hmm.
I think Obama was the only person elected president because of the color of his skin.
In part,
I really
certainly.
believe that.
But he had to have a certain level of qualification.
Yeah, sure. But I know very conservative, so-called rednecks who voted for Obama and say, "Oh, get a guy a chance."
Yeah.
You know,
That's nice.
probably didn't know what he's doing, but give him a chance.
Right. Well, he was inexperienced. In many ways, more than Trump. More inexperienced.
Yes.
But I think he was well intentioned. But I was just reading something today. One of the problems with Obama, he promised to end the wars in the Middle East, and he got into office, and then he got into the influence of establishment political people, and didn't do any of that, and it even escalated some of the conflicts. And if you're going to have a liberal, left-wing guy, and he's not going to do liberal left-wing things, then what's the point in having him in office?
I heard someone describe it recently. Said, "There's not." He says he described the American political system this way. He says, "There's the establishment, which is both parties,
Right.
and then Trump came in and just messed up everything for everybody
Yeah.
because he wasn't part of the group."
Well, sure.
They said
That's why he was elected.
they're two sides, but it's one group. the Republicans and Democrats are essentially one group.
They certainly work together when it's to their advantage too. But they don't get a lot done. I mean, they're enough in conflict with each other that as long as the House and the Senate are run by different parties, not a lot of legislation gets passed.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised they were able to pass a budget, but they passed it because Trump gave the Democrats everything they wanted, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this budget that he passed last year, it's an abomination. It's the biggest budget we ever had, and we can't afford it. And it also, he didn't do any of the conservative things. People are, all these pro-life and Christian people who are supporting Trump, he signed a bill into law, this budget with $550 million for Planned Parenthood.
And that's terrible. And that's terrible.
Yeah. And they aren't. Nobody's taking it.
I didn't know that, but yeah. no one's asked any questions. I didn't know that, and I followed things fairly closely.
Yeah,
especially that one.
I mean, that's not my biggest issue, but it seems to me perfectly reasonable to cut government spending on Planned Parenthood, and I don't see why they can't do that. Hold the line on that sometime.
I know his efforts to try to defund Planned Parenthood received some publicity.
Yeah.
But the backdoor dealing on approving funding for it, that's just god awful.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, there's some other problems with it too. The ag bill, which ended up being part of it, the $28 billion for bailouts for agriculture, which were completely unnecessary. If we hadn't started this trade war with China, we'd be able to sell all that agri-product to China instead, make money instead of spending government money for it. And that's just coming out of the pocket of the taxpayers to subsidize farmers for food they're not selling, which they could be selling if we didn't have these tariff wars.
There's just a lot of madness going on. Now, my wife likes to say that we need a third party.
I agree.
And I say that. Now, when I look at it, sometimes I look at Trump was almost like a one-man third party.
Yeah.
Because actually his election was a hostile takeover of the Republican Party.
Right, but
there were 18 guys running. There were 18 guys running.
Oh yeah, 17, I think. Yeah.
18 counting him.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't that hostile because as soon as he got in the front position, all the Republican insiders basically went over to his side and supported him, and that became the core of his support. And those people essentially corrupted what he was doing. I mean, he didn't remain an outsider for all that long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he still tries, but it's not a third party. What we really need is a third party with a separate party structure, with the electoral presence to try to get things done, to have grassroots activism and stuff like that.
I always laugh at myself because I have some friends, I call them African Americans. I make a distinction between African Americans and black people because black people to me are more like Frederick Douglass. These African Americans, these guys that sell out.
Yeah.
I'm more like a Frederick Douglass type of guy.
Well, that's not a bad model to have.
And because Frederick Douglass's thing was, as far as black African Americans doing black people, leave them alone. Just leave them alone.
Well, Frederick Douglass was a libertarian.
And that was all. That's what I kind of figured.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those early abolitionists and the people he hooked up with, the white activists who he hooked up with were very libertarian, like William Lloyd Garrison. If you read his writings, he was, totally against government. He wanted people to take responsibility for their own lives, and people be allowed to be free, not only free in like Frederick Douglass was a slave who wanted to be free. That's one kind of freedom, but freedom from government imposition of all sorts was what he wanted. He wanted freedom from societal imposition. He wanted all the standards of society to be taken away, all these moral codes that people were living by, and he wanted to have basically free love and free sex and a really good time. He's sort of a hippie for his time.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
He moved to England and had a bunch of mistresses and orgies, and it worked out really well, I think, for him.
Well,
of course, he moved to England for the same reason Frederick Douglass moved to England, because they put out a hit on him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they put out $200,000 on Frederick Douglass's head and $100,000 on William Lloyd Garrison's head to have him killed during the Civil War. So they had to flee to England.
That's kind of surprising. Usually I think of people as fleeing to France.
Yeah. Well, England was very, very anti-slavery
Oh,
at
yeah.
that time. Yeah. I mean, England, to a large extent, was responsible for the breakdown of slavery in America, because England put trade restrictions on slave trade, and I guess 1832 they made it impossible for them to bring slaves from Africa to America anymore, and that was, the economic pressure of that caused slavery to become more and more expensive, so it became inviable. That was one of the biggest causes of the breakdown of slavery.
So it's an economic thing. I know it was an economic thing for Lincoln because I have a baby brother who has a PhD in philosophy and adult education. He likes to say, well, Lincoln didn't free the slaves because he liked black people. And my thing has always been, I don't care if you like me or not.
Hmm.
Just don't bother. Just let me be.
That seems reasonable.
You don't have to like me. I don't want you to. I have a wife. that's the only person. If she likes me, I'm good. I'm good.
That seems to be a good plan.
But all that other stuff about liberal, I believe that African Americans, they sell out to liberal white folks. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody makes compromises, though.
Yeah, but I can't compromise at death. I can't compromise killing babies.
Yeah.
That's the compromise I can't make.
Well, the African American population has been targeted by the abortion movement
From
the start.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
With the eugenics movement,
Yeah.
which most of them don't know about because they
Well, there are people who want to bring eugenics back.
they know how to read a little bit, but not much.
Mm-hmm.
They don't dig into it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the history of slavery, eugenics, Planned Parenthood, the connection is right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, even the people who support Planned Parenthood don't realize the history of it at all. You know.
I read time and time again about people who are working Planned Parenthood leaving because they actually find out what's actually going on, and then they can't stand it.
Well, I imagine it'd be very hard, generally.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think that it's time. Now, my thing has always been, I'm not stuck with the Republican Party, but it's closer. Its ideas are closer to what I believe makes sense.
Right.
And it made sense to me when I was in high school, when I was looking at studying things. When I was like a senior in high school, I just looked up, what's a conservative? What's a liberal? Conservatives were for gradual change. Liberals were for just change for the sake of change. So
That's really progressives, not
Yeah.
liberals. That's something that's gotten messed up.
And that's what and to me, just being a conservative just made more sense to me.
Yeah.
It makes more sense to if you go over to a cliff and look over the cliff and see look down there at least,
Mm-hmm.
than to jump and then say, well, it might be all right, it may not. You just look before you leap made more sense than leaping and then
very,
looking.
very practical.
And so my girlfriend at the time, she teased me. He says he's a conservative. Yes. And when I went to college, I was probably the only black conservative on the campus. But that was me.
Yeah. Well, that's when you went to college. It was basically
69 and 70.
Yeah, most conservatives were pretty rare on college campuses, and you're dealing with a lot of radicals. I mean, the radical left of the '60s was not a good thing generally. They ultimately grew up and became the people who became the big government status,
Mm-hmm.
who promulgated the sort of all the things that you get the sort of what we consider the bad aspects of progressive liberalism came out of that period. And they're not, there's a lot of confusion over liberalism, what liberalism really is. What we have today, what the left is today, isn't really liberal. I mean, liberalism is basically the idea that you look out for other people and you try to do good, and you try not to make things worse than they are already. That's the basics of liberalism. What we have today with progressives, they want to experiment, they want to do lots of things for people that people should be doing for themselves. And that's not a good thing.
It's to me, it's just anti-common sense to want to do for someone what they can and should do for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And I've read some things recently about they want to guarantee income to people who don't even work, who don't even want to work. That's insane.
Well, that's a theory that's been going around for a while. Milton Friedman, the conservative economist, actually supported something like that. And it's the idea that if you give people a basic level of income, then it's going to cost the government. This is a pragmatic thing. It's going to cost the government less than paying welfare does, than to give some basic level of income to everybody. He was promoting something called the negative income tax, where people who earn below a certain level of income would be paid to bring their incomes up to that level.
When I first worked in politics, I was working on the Democratic side, actually.
Yeah.
And I was talking, the guy who, Bill Oliver, he was Jimmy Carter's campaign manager in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking when I was working on Mickey Leland's campaign at the time, back in 1982. And he was saying, explaining something. I said, well, Bill, what you're talking about is taking from the rich and giving to the poor.
Yeah.
I said, that's Robin Hood. I said, I want to get rich. I don't want to take it from me. I mean, let's go.
Yeah.
So, it's part in the sense selfish. I had selfish motives, of course. But
selfish motives are honest motives, at least.
But to me, if you take from the rich and give to the poor, Robin Hood never made anybody rich.
Right.
You have a rich person who's poor, and you have a poor person who has a temporary bump because they're going to consume it and expend it. That's what Obama did with the stimulus. Just gave money away. And what they do, they spend at the stores, and it probably boosted the economy some because they was buying TVs and buying stuff.
Yeah. Well,
But it didn't create wealth.
Right. Because they weren't spending it on starting businesses and stuff.
There was no
that.
work. There was no working. There was no work
Right.
component involved. And when I read about how Baltimore didn't develop despite the investment, gobs of money in there.
Yeah.
They said that we forgot about human capital. Yeah, it helps for people to work.
Yeah. Have you been to Baltimore recently?
No, I hate it.
Well, I used to live in that area, and it's gotten bad. It was good for a little while.
Gotten bad.
But I mean, it got a little better for a little while, but now it's just gone completely downhill again.
That is the ugliest town I have ever seen.
Not my favorite place. Yeah.
When I visited Baltimore, it was like, just old and rusty, and decaying.
And a lot of boarded up buildings.
Decay was the word that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because old and they had black mayors, Kurt Smoke or somebody like that.
Yeah, that's his mayor. Yeah.
And so all these big cities, many of them that are heavily populated with black people, have Democratic governments that haven't done a damn thing. You had a black president. You got a black president. You got black people run the city, and it's in the ground.
No, it's not because of the black people necessarily. Not because they're black anyway.
No. It's because they're incompetent.
Yeah.
It's because they're incompetent.
Right.
But when I was reading about Baltimore and they said that we forgot about the development of human capital, that means you forgot about the idea of empowering people to work.
Yeah.
Because if people work, they can produce, and if they can produce, then they can contribute something.
Yeah. Well, Bill Clinton had a lot of good ideas in that area. He had lots of ideas like workfare and stuff like that. He went around to other states like Wisconsin where they were doing workfare and borrowed those ideas for the federal government and tried to establish things which would encourage people to go out and work and not just go on welfare. He was very atypical of the Democrats for that. That's why they didn't like him very much. A lot of Democrats opposed Clinton because he was relatively conservative. But that stuff didn't stick around.
That's not what got played. That's not what got the attention.
Yeah. Also things like urban enterprise zones, stuff like that.
Yes.
Came out of that period. And Bush continued that policy, and some of those things worked pretty well.
I thought Bush had a real opportunity.
Hmm.
But
Well,
I,
it was all
I,
9/11 destroyed it all. Though. I mean, he couldn't get anything done after 9/11.
yeah.
You know, he had a lot of good ideas in his first year as president, and then it just fell apart.
Well, it was just too much for it. Just too much to deal with.
Yeah.
I guess.
And too much spending, too much money going into those wars. And the military budget has become really excessive. And America's military is a great resource. It helps a lot of people get up out of poverty.
Now, geopolitically, it seems to me that we're involving ourselves in these world wars and skirmishes all over the place, and China's just kind of like just sitting back making money.
Yeah, they're
making
heavily
stuff.
invested in Iran.
And making stuff.
Yeah, I mean, China's using Iran as their business hub for that part of the world. They're sending stuff out from Iran, using it for transshipment stuff, using it. You know, Iran's got a pretty well-developed technology and culture. And China's capitalizing on that. We should be doing that. We should have made friends with the Iranians, gotten them to change their leadership slowly, and gotten in there as their partners in this trade stuff. And China's taking advantage of all of that. And China they control the Panama Canal now. They control all sorts of things that we should be doing. We let them basically steal a march and take over those things.
They control the Panama Canal?
Yeah, well, I think they maybe. Yeah, I think that they're still in partnership on it. I know that who was that who did that? That wasn't under Bush. That was before Bush. I think under Clinton they got the Panama Canal contract.
They got just about everything they
Yeah.
want out of Clinton.
Yeah. Gave them a lot of money.
Technology transfers too.
A lot of money to Clinton
The
too.
technology was moved during the Clinton administration. It was in the Department of Defense.
Mhm.
He moved it to Commerce.
Yeah.
And they made transfers.
Mhm.
That's what I understand. That's
And
what
there are
those
a lot
trade
of transfers of
trade
cash
missions were
back
about.
to Clinton at the time too.
Uh-huh.
A lot of campaign money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was working at Judicial Watch in Washington D.C.
Mhm.
when Clinton was in office.
Yeah.
And all we did all day was examine the Clinton administration and see what we could dig up.
Yeah.
That was our job.
Yeah. Well, they dug up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And then I think the guy who's head now, Tom Fitton.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton and I started around the same time. We started about the same time together.
Mm-hmm.
And he just stayed on. I think Larry founded it.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow Larry got squeezed out.
Yeah. Just Watch got taken over by the nativists, by the Taunton Group. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're big money people who, like the Mercers, who've been taking over think tanks and things like that.
Out of Pittsburgh? I know when I was there, there was something going on heavy out of Pittsburgh. I remember that. I remember that much.
Yeah. My family came from Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's from Cincinnati.
Right next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brother City.
Yeah.
Right down the river from one another.
Mm-hmm.
And they look a lot alike, too. Both the urban towns, they feel alike. I went to Pittsburgh
They
once.
smell similar, too?
They just kind of feel like the same.
Yeah.
When I went to Pittsburgh, it was kind of like, felt like Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. Well, all those industrial towns are sort of similar. And they're always on rivers. They've got a lot of industry going on, a lot of old industry that's obsolete and being phased out.
Well, old industry was based on transportation, which was essentially water.
Right. If you're on the Ohio, you had the main transportation corridor.
Yeah.
And they built the railroads right next to it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. But so how you like Austin?
I lived here for a long time.
How long you been here?
Oh, good Lord. 35 years?
Out in Manor, in that area?
I live in Manor now. I always lived in East Austin.
He lives in East Austin.
Yeah. I lived right near here, actually. Over in French Place for a while. Most recently, then I moved to Manor 15 years ago. Because it's cheaper to live out there.
They taxed you.
Well, up until recently, the taxes
induced you
there
to-
were pretty good.
Okay. In Manor?
Yeah.
But they're rising now in Maynard too.
Yeah.
Huh?
They're the school district sucks, basically, and they've had to spend a lot of money on the schools to try to make them more competitive. And they've had some success.
In Maynard,
Yeah.
I think I do a lot of court appointments down in Hayes County,
Mm.
and a lot of I call it Austin is spilling over into Hayes County.
Yeah.
And
Hayes
it's
County's
like
growing really fast.
Going right there. It's like going right down 35.
Mm.
And then I do a lot of cases in Caldwell, which is
Over
183.
more east, yeah.
183.
Right.
But it seems like the major growth is going right down 35.
Yeah.
And San Marcos, I sense it's being squeezed because you got San Antonio coming up
Mm-hmm.
and you got Austin coming down.
It's all going to be a big urban corridor, just like in the Northeast. That's what it's turning into. One place I like out there, Lockhart, that's in Caldwell
That's in
County.
Caldwell County, yeah.
And it hasn't developed as much as the other parts down I-35, but it's coming up too. But that's a nice place to visit, and there are a lot of interesting, businesses out there.
I like Caldwell County.
Yeah.
I tell my wife because I see there are more cows there. I like
If you like cows,
and when I'm
good.
in Austin, when I'm driving, I just let me get out of this, let me get to the cows, and I'll be cool.
Well, there used to be cows in downtown Austin. I remember when there were downtown farms on MLK. There was one out there.
What? That's down in UT then.
Well, it wasn't all the way down to UT. It was on this side of airport, but there was a big farm on MLK where they ran cows for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was saying I've never seen cattle in Austin, except Bevo at UT.
Yeah, Bevo. Yeah.
He's got the whole town to himself.
Yeah. They've got lots of cows, dead cows at a place like Franklin's Barbecue and stuff.
Yeah. My favorite is I go to Sam's Barbecue.
And Sam's good, except they sort of slacked off some, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They don't want to work as hard as they used to. They used to be open at 3 a.m. every day.
Yeah, they like on Mondays night close at like 7 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
Yeah, right. I like being able to go there at 3 a.m. When I lived over in French Place, I would just 5-minute drive, go over to Sam's and pick up anything I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They have and that mutton they have is the best.
Oh
you
yeah.
ever had the mutton?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should go have the mutton. It's amazing. They do mutton at Southside Market in Elgin too, and it's good there. But at Sam's, it's just amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been to Elgin.
Never?
No, never.
It's
have.
our neighbor next door.
Except coming from Houston, I think you go through it on the back
Yeah.
way you come to Houston.
Yeah.
290, I think.
Yeah, if you come the
290
north way.
goes through there.
There are lots of good barbecue places there. It used to be a really good one. Well, now they have the main ones are Southside Market, which now has branches in other towns, and they've got one in Bastrop, and Meyer Sausage is there too. But there used to be one away from the highway called Crosstown Barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good. It was an African American or black-owned business, and they did excellent barbecue. But because it wasn't on the main highway,
Mm-hmm.
it couldn't compete, and so Southside Market became very successful. But
And that's in
Crosstown-
Elgin?
yeah.
Okay.
Southside's one of the most famous barbecue places in the country. People come from all over the country just to go to Southside, and their barbecue's not that great.
I thought it was Franklin's. Because
Now Franklin, nobody can
my
go.
buddy
Yeah, but
in-
nobody can go to Franklin because you have to.
my buddy in Michigan has asked me have gone to Franklin's. I said no.
Yeah.
The lines are too long.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's good barbecue, but it's not that good.
If we were going to do Franklin's, we need to go get in line now for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy.
I had to do. We got some Franklin's last year for New Year's Day, and we had to order it a month in advance. Yeah, that's not good.
It's not that
I
good.
mean, there are other barbecue places around that are just as good as Franklin's is.
Oh yeah.
Style Switch is very good. You ever been there?
No.
Yeah, it's up on North Lamar. It's excellent barbecue, but not as famous.
You've been hanging around here long enough to know far better than me.
Well,
'Cause I like Austin. I liked Austin for a minute because I didn't know anyone here.
Mm-hmm.
I like to go places where I don't know anyone, see what happens.
It's an adventure.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's how I think it should be lived, you know.
If you're stuck with the same people all the time, it's not so good. Yeah, meet new people is
You can't grow.
positive.
Can't grow. Can't grow.
I do a lot of traveling, but I'd like to do more probably.
Oh yeah.
Austin's a good place to travel out of, though.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, we've got an airport, and they've got plenty of planes. And they connect all over the country, all over the world, and the fares aren't that high anymore. Used to be they charge you extra if you had to go to Austin, but now we get enough business in and out of here with the airport that the rates are pretty good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Cincinnati used to be nice to travel out of, but
Yeah, Cincinnati's airport's not even in Cincinnati.
no, it's in northern Kentucky.
I know. It's confusing.
When I go home to Cincinnati, I usually fly into Dayton or Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
It just it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And then the cities around, the other city, Indianapolis has come up a little bit. Columbus has come up.
Yeah.
And so it's taken some of the gloss away from Cincinnati, I believe.
I have a lot of friends who are from Ohio, and they all live here in Texas now. There's some sort of trend there.
Ohio's a great place to be from.
Yeah.
When I was looking at law schools, I called myself getting away from snow.
That's
And when
like that.
I went to SMU in Dallas in January of 1975, it snowed, and I was upset because I said I didn't go far enough south.
Yeah. It
Still
doesn't snow
got
very often up there.
No, but when it does, it's like icy and nasty.
Yeah. Usually around
January.
the last weekend of January, first weekend of February. Yeah.
I don't like any of that.
That's when you get those nasty ice storms. I was at College Station once visiting friends on the first weekend of February, and there was an ice storm that came up, and all the cars were driving sideways and going down the hills and crashing into each other. It was incredible. We had to end up being trapped there for an extra couple of days. You don't want to be trapped in College Station for any longer than you have to be, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been there, not yet. But
You haven't missed anything.
what kills me is sometimes you have these weather patterns where you'll just get ice, just ice.
Mhm.
It like rains and it turns to ice and it freezes.
Yeah.
I hate that because that's a dangerous
Very dangerous.
situation.
Yeah. Black ice.
Is that what they call it, black ice?
Yeah, and then when it snows on top of that,
Yeah,
that's the worst.
that's Chicago.
Yeah.
That's what I was running away from.
Victory. That was our time signal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It just got a couple of minutes. We
Yeah.
stopped at 28:30. But
Wow, look at us. I haven't even looked at
yeah,
us.
that's us, man.
Yeah.
That's you. You should have told your kids before you left home. Dad's gonna be on channel 10
Well,
today.
Here's the sad part. My kids don't have cable. They all have streaming services. So they have cable for internet, but they don't have access cable. You may have to find other ways to put this on the web. You got it
Yes,
on the
yes.
web, yeah.
Oh no, it's on the web too.
Yeah.
But your kids are probably computer geniuses since you do that stuff.
Yeah, I
Print
hope so. I
stuff.
hope they understand computers. My daughter's redesigning my website, so hopefully that'll work out well.
Yeah, I think that qualifies as knowing something about computers.
Yeah.
If she's redesigning your
And
website.
she's also kind of aesthetically inclined, so she complains to me about why is it all brown, why is it all yellow, why aren't you using other colors? So she's going to solve those problems.
Well, that's what kids are for.
Yeah. Hope so.
I sometimes consider kids are nature's way of paying you back for some of the stuff you've done.
Yeah. And hopefully they're paying you back in a good way too.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm assuming you've done good things.
I've done a couple of good things.
Yeah.
Tried anyway. When I became a lawyer, I said if I can help one person, if I can make one person's life better, it will have been worth it. But when I think back about law school, I don't know. That was the most forgettable time of my life.
Well, you do a lot of pro bono work, right?
Yes.
And you probably make a lot of people's lives better.
I wish I could make mine a little better.
It doesn't pay so well.
You got to look out for number one first. Unfortunately, Not unfortunate. That's just the reality.
Right.
Dave, thank you for coming on the show tonight. And I got to know you better.
It's good to talk to
we
you.
had never met. we
Yeah.
never really met.
Well, we bumped into each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a Republican thing.
Yeah.